Welcome to the HMO Property Show. By investors, for investors. Catch us weekly as we discuss all things cash flow positive property investing. Whether you're a seasoned investor, a new landlord, or just curious about property investing, this is the podcast for you. Sponsored by the Co-Living Collective, your trusted partner in creating vibrant and sustainable shared living experiences. Visit us at colivingcollective.com.au to learn more.
Welcome back to the HMO Property Show. I'm your host, Neil Gibb, as always, and today we are bringing in a local area expert to talk about what's happening in their suburb, because we had Jamie Burgell from CBRE in the podcast not too long ago, and he spoke about the data that we're collecting, and the data that we're seeing is different to what we're seeing on the ground. So I wanted to reach out to Jay Das from Noble Avenue.
Hi, Neil.
Jay.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you, mate. And I wanted to get local area experts on the podcast to ask them what's happening in their suburb, because I believe some of the data that we're seeing from the likes of Rewa is a little bit skewed and not as accurate as we probably could be getting right now. So, Jay, thank you for coming on, mate.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So tell us about Noble Avenue.
Yes.
Is it yours?
No. So Noble was started by Linda. So
Yep.
Linda Noble, she started that almost 7 years ago.
Yep.
Before that, she was at Realmark Coastal for over 11 years.
Right.
Started off as a boutique brand with just Linda and her team. And then over the last 18 months, the team has grown to about 14. So I came on board second, and then a very good friend of mine, Karen, who sells in Kareen,
Yep.
Karen Riches, came on board, and then the team has grown
Right.
since then quite significantly.
14. That's a big
Yeah,
team.
quite a
What
big
sort of
team.
areas do you cover?
So Karen predominantly operates in the Kareen Duncraig area. We've got Shirley in Karrinyup. Linda does Hillary Sorrento with a little bit in Callaroo.
Yep.
I'm based more in Iluka, Currumbine, Burns and surrounds. We've then got Nikki, who does in Ocean Reef. We've also then got Andrea Lloyd, who sells up in Jindalee. So
Right.
we go right
But the
way
full
through.
northern corridor covered there.
Correct.
Yeah, beach side of the freeway by the sounds of things.
Pretty much the coast.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much the coast.
Yeah, nice. And you said that your suburbs are Iluka and...
Iluka and Currumbine predominantly, but obviously there is always overflow, which takes you into Connolly suburbs, with a lot of people that are upgrading from those suburbs onto the coast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. And how did you end up in them suburbs?
So I started real estate properly in 2014, selling out on my own. Before that, I dabbled in it, working with someone, etc. When I started at my first agency, or my third agency at that point, they gave me Currumbine. So this is your suburb. I knew nothing about it. So I was like, well, guess this is where I'm selling.
Yeah.
That's how it always started. And then Currumbine and Iluka has that natural progression,
Yes.
which is how it ended up going into Iluka, where it's predominantly where I sell.
Great. So
Yeah.
10, 11 years in them
11
suburbs
years.
now. So good to say you are the expert.
Or hopefully.
Tell us about a little bit about the areas. You mentioned the coastal there, and
Yes.
one generally feeds into the other. Give us a little bit of history on the
So
suburbs.
generally a lot of buyers that in the suburbs that I operate in, they generally start their search on the coast. So this is what I was seeing happening even when I first started, but then they realise that their budget doesn't get them a lot on those coastal suburbs. Then it's that transgression into the other ones across the road where they go, look, let's see what we can get.
Yep.
And then that divide with Marmion generally is a couple of $100,000, which they go, well, let's start here, and then we'll move across the coast to Iluka.
Yep.
So, and we see that a lot of that transition from people who generally move from Currumbine to Iluka, and then people who then downsize a few years later from Iluka back into Currumbine or stay in those suburbs.
Interesting.
Generally, people in those suburbs stay around the area.
Yep.
If I look at where they move to, it's really not far.
It's a beautiful area as well,
It
isn't it?
is.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is.
What's the demographic of people that live in Currumbine and Iluka?
Currumbine has quite a varied demographic. You've got a lot of young families that are also with young kids, etc. And then you've also got families with older kids that live in there. And then you've got families that have just lived there for years and now starting to move on from the bigger houses and downsizing into retirement villages. Iluka's slightly a little bit different from there. So a few years ago, Iluka was a lot of families, probably older couples in their 50s. Now that trend started to change.
Cool.
Now we're getting a lot of younger families moving into the suburb.
Beautiful, beautiful. Price points in them suburbs? What are they?
Quite different. So in Currumbine, you could probably pick something up. It won't be flash, but it'll still be a good product around that nines is what I'm going to say, around that early to mid nines, to something that's quite special into that 1.3, 1.4 sort of mark. Iluka, on the other hand, to get something that needs a fair bit of work, you'll be very lucky if you're picking something up for around that 1.2, and that is in the older part, probably quite close to Marmion. Whereas if you go to closer to the ocean, you're starting to get to that mid ones for something that is going to need a fair bit of work, right up to upwards to about that 3 mil mark.
Right. And what we're classing as a fair bit of work, kitchens, bathrooms, flooring.
Kitchens, bathrooms, floors. completely a cosmetic overhaul
Yep.
is what it is. Yeah.
Kind of year were they built in?
So Iluka started in 1994. So that's when the suburbs, so there's quite a bit of a divide. So 94 is where the original part of Iluka started. And then if you get into the west part of Delgado, which is what we call Oceanside, they started around that 2003, 2004 sort of mark.
Right.
Yep. So that's where they started.
So 20 to 25 years old.
Correct.
So it's still got the original kitchens and bathrooms
Some
in.
of the, yes.
Yeah.
Some of them have not done a lot to it. But in this current market, they're getting away with it.
Yeah. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you're saying 3 million plus?
Look, there's been one sale that recently sold on the front. That was quite a special home. That transacted for 3.175.
Right.
Now that's oceanfront, but it was quite a spectacular home.
Yeah.
Other than that, you're probably looking at around for something quite special around that mid-2s sort of mark, potentially a little bit higher. And again, that's dependent on where it is. There's certain streets in Iluka which command higher values as well. Yeah, especially the ex-display street, which is Romano Crescent.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Well, this fits nicely into, I've been talking about these 3 different brackets of kind of like the housing continuum that we've got in Perth right now. So at the bottom end, we've got your sort of Rockinghams, Armadales, Gosnells, where the investors have piled into and pushed them prices up to around the 750k mark, and then from 750 to 2.5 mil is the kind of mid bracket, and it sounds like Iluka and Currambine fit nicely into them. And what we're hearing on the ground and what we're hearing in all these different Facebook groups is, Perth had its run, everybody's leaving and the market's flatlining. So the intention of today's podcast here is to find out directly from you yourself what's going on in this suburb, because it fits into that nice little bracket, right?
I can definitely say that's not the trend that we've been seeing. There are still, our home open numbers are still massive. And especially in suburbs like Iluka, we're getting a lot of people wanting to upgrade.
Right.
So people that are living in those suburbs are looking to upgrade into those particular suburbs. So things are still moving. Stock levels are quite tight, but prices are still holding up pretty strong at the moment. I haven't seen a decline in prices. Have I seen the heat come off the market? Probably the number of offers have definitely dropped.
Right.
But prices are still pretty strong.
But we're still seeing a lot of interest in them.
Lots of interest. My inquiry levels are still pretty high. We recently had one, to give you a bit of an example, I sold it to them back in 2021 for 1,505. I've just transacted that property probably about a month ago for 2,150. Right. And exactly in the same. So if you look on that return of investment, we had 58 groups through the first home open, 22 through the second, and then just multiple offers.
Yeah. Pretty typical of what we've seen or what we've heard in the news over the last 24 to probably 36 months now. What we're hearing at the other end of the spectrum is, the home opens in just interest in that lower end of the market right now is definitely dying off.
Yes.
But it doesn't sound like it's happening here, right?
No, definitely not. And we're still getting a lot of buyers that have moved from over east, still looking for their dream home. Yeah. I generally feel a lot of buyers as well, and I've got a lot of synergy with Linda's business, where she operates in the Hillary's area, where they start their search over there first. And obviously the price point in Hillary's is higher than where I operate. When they start looking there and then they go, we don't really want to spend that much for something that still needs work, 10 minutes down the coast, they're getting something that's all done. And those are the sort of buyers that are coming to me.
And this is the ripple effect that we talk about as well. Ripples out of Hillary's into Iluka, from Iluka into Currambine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Demographic then, are we seeing investors in this space?
Not a lot of investors. Yeah. I do get a fair few investors, but what I classify, they're slightly different. They're investors that are currently not living in Perth, living over east, wanting to buy a property here for them to live in about 4 or 5 years' time. So it's like a short-term investment, because we've had a few properties that have sold recently, and those buyers are going, we're going to rent it out for about 4 or 5 years because we're not ready to move yet, but we feel like your market's going to keep going up, and then we're going to move in.
All right.
Yeah.
Very interesting to see that from the East Coast as well.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of the noise that I'm hearing is from the East Coast that the market's dying. But when you think about these different brackets, for people to be buying now to move into in 4 years' time, then the smart people, and they normally say smart money moves first as well, don't they? And the smarter people are probably seeing the long-term trend, the lack of housing that we've got will continue to push the market upwards.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
What's happened over the last 10 years in Iluka then?
Significantly different. So if you think about 10 years ago, so just about the time, just a little bit after I started, if you were going into Iluka with $1.2 million or $1.3 million, you'd be guaranteed to get something quite close to the front, and you'd be getting a very good product.
Right.
You'd be getting quite a good product, whereas now that's getting you an entry-level product into Iluka. $800,000 back then was getting you a very nice property.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's think back to 2014 when you first started.
Yeah.
That was kind of like the peak of the last market in Perth, wasn't it? And then we had that long downturn. And again, when we hear about what's going on in the media, they're saying that some suburbs haven't quite reached the last peak of the last boom. It sounds like Iluka's smashed right through that.
Iluka's definitely gone through the Richter a little bit. Like even looking at the median price, what it was last year, where it was sitting around that 1.2 sort of mark, we're now at 1.470, closer to the 1.5.
Nice.
So it's gone up quite a bit.
Nice. And housing change over them years? Is it a very established suburb? Is the development going on there?
So Iluka started in 1994. That's when the suburb started. There's been a lot of development since then. We are almost at the final stages as to where the last blocks of land are getting released.
Right.
That's obviously now, once that's done, then that's pretty much done. It's had quite a good progression over time. I think the developers have been very smart in how they've done it as well. It hasn't all been done in one go. It's been done in stages. So land has obviously also appreciated in value. Whereas if you've seen a lot of other suburbs, when there's a lot of land, people generally go for that land. Whereas in Iluka, because the land is still high, people are obviously going through whether we go for land or buying something that's established.
Interesting. And is in Iluka landlocked? Is there any development opportunities around it in neighbouring suburbs, or is it pretty tightly held?
It's pretty tight. So Iluka in a suburb, so it's so funny because every time we have a contract and a buyer's never bought in Iluka, they get scared with all the covenants on the property because there's so many restrictions as to what you can and can't do, and it's that explanation because the title is massive. And so I think they've done it. There's a homeowners association where there is a one-off fee of $110, and buyers always go, "What's that about?" And it's just one of those sort of things. But it's been really good for the suburb because this is the common sentiment that I get from a lot of buyers going, we want to be in Iluka because when you drive around, everyone's houses and gardens look great.
It's just down to the covenant that's on title.
Absolutely.
And these covenants that we're seeing on title, these are generally from when the land was developed to how the houses were technically built back then.
Yep, so what it needs to have.
Yeah, so they're not really affecting people that are buying an established property now, are they?
Not anymore.
Okay.
Not anymore.
Let's talk about current buying then, because we talked about Iluka quite a bit.
Yes.
Is the demographic of buyers still the same in Iluka to Currambine?
Slightly different. So we get a lot of people that in Currambine, I'd probably say is more of their second home as opposed to their third or fourth home. So Currambine is a lot of people that generally might be coming from a 3x1, their first home where they've just got married. Now they've got kids and they want something a little bit bigger. Currambine's great because you've also got sections in Currambine. You've got 4 different sections in Currambine. You've got the golf course section, which is the most prized pocket of Currambine, where prices are a lot higher. It's like an estate in itself. And then you've got the entry level part where the houses are probably smaller, but the land is slightly bigger. So very typical of older. And Currambine started in the early 90s as well. There are some very nice pockets in Currambine where you actually feel like you're somewhere else. Yeah, because it backs onto the golf course. You've got those great views. So, and a lot of buyers generally go, look, if we can't afford the ocean view, we might as well get the golf course view.
And these are generally 4x2, double lock-up garage type thing?
Most of them are 4x2s. You do get the occasional 3x1s, and I don't actually think Iluka's got any 3x1s thinking about it.
Interesting.
I don't think it exists.
All 4x2s?
All 4x, and everything has a 2-car garage.
Right.
Every property in Iluka has to have a 2-car garage.
Has to have one?
Yeah, that's on the covenant.
As per the covenant? Interesting.
Enclosed garage.
We bought some properties in Currambine before, and I know you said 2 different suburbs, and the properties in Currambine are car parks, not garages, so I'm guessing different restrictions in Currambine.
There's nothing. So obviously if you look at the titles on Currambine, there's nothing on there anymore. It's all expired.
Okay. Give us an example of something that you've just sold in Currambine recently.
So there was one that I sold a little while ago on Kowloon Corner, so it held the record for quite a while. That was a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, double-storey, built in 2000, I think it was, so about 25 years old. Now, I've appraised that house probably about 3 or 4 times since I've been in real estate, but they were never ready to sell. And funnily enough, I was looking at the price when I first put on it to what it transacted for. And I think initially it was always quite a special home, but there was no sales evidence to justify it.
What made it special?
It had a really big void. It was, when you walked in through the open plan living, it was an Iluka house in Currambine. That was what it was.
Interesting.
That's what it was. A very funny way to describe it, but it was literally an Iluka home.
How close to Iluka?
You've got a couple of... you've got a section. So I'd probably say to get to the beach, about a 3-minute drive. So not that far. Ocean views from up the top. It was immaculately maintained, but it was still a 25-year-old home where the kitchen was probably ready for an update and all of that. Good-sized bedrooms. I think it was a Webb and Brown Neves home. I can't remember now off the top of my head, so it was quite special. Now, the first time I appraised it, I'm pretty sure I put a price of around $890 to $900, and I might have said to them, look, I'm not sure if we're going to get this. There's just nothing around. And then I think it went up to about mid-9s to maybe $1 million, I think the second time. But I ended up transacting it for $1,375.
Wow.
Yeah, and that set a record for the suburb. We always knew it was going to be one of those houses, but there was nothing to justify that. Now, if I look at those buyers that came through my first home open, if if I looked at where they'd been through before, they'd all come through my Iluka home opens before. So they generally started their search there. Go, look, let's go across the road. Because if that was in Iluka, at that point, it probably would have been mid to high ones.
Right. And why did they look at that one in Currambine? Were they getting priced out of Iluka?
I think people are getting priced out because everyone starts their search on the coast, and that's what I generally feel. And they start with a healthy budget. They go, look, we're going to go in with 1.4 or 1.5, and then they start looking at these products and going, we're still going to have to do a fair bit to this.
Yeah.
And we don't have the time or the energy or the money sometimes to do it. Let's just go across the road. And they go, look, we'll buy here now, we'll still get a great house, and then we'll look at doing something down the track.
Yes.
Yep.
What about development opportunities in both suburbs? Are we seeing anything there?
So Iluka's doesn't have, so with zoning and stuff, predominantly it's all residential R20. There is an apartment block that's all sold, and it's a combination of investors and owner-occupiers. There's the Iluka Plaza. Now, when that was first put into council, there was an uproar. If you went through the Iluka Facebook page, no one wanted the IGA, no one wanted any of that
The
there.
NIMBYs.
Yes, they were like, we don't want people to come in here. They don't live in here.
Yeah.
It was one of those sort of things. I think people have started being open to it. I think it's actually been good for the suburb. There's a bar and bistro. There's a Spanish tapas bar upstairs, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
There was a section in Iluka, and no one really knows what's going to happen. There was going to be retirement villages, but that's been canned from what I've been told. So there's no strata in Iluka aside from those apartments and then another section in Discovery Circuit there.
Yes.
Everything else is residential R20. I do believe that's actually probably helped the suburb in holding its value.
I think so.
Yeah, because obviously it's just appealing to a certain demographics. But the apartments have been good because a lot of people that have bought those apartments, they used to live in Iluka and they've just downsized there.
And when were the apartments finished?
I could be wrong here, but I'm going to say probably about maybe about 4 years.
Yeah. Any sales evidence?
The
of them
highest sale,
recently?
one's just sold up the top, and that's just sold for 1,325, a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom with ocean views.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah, 2 cars. Yeah, 2 carports.
And what was that selling for originally? Do we know?
Oh, so a few years ago, I think it might have sold for around 900 or 1.
Right,
I think
so
off the
it's-
plan, I think that's what it sold for.
Yeah. I've seen some good growth there as well.
Good growth.
Ocean views 1.3. It's actually doesn't sound too bad.
It
3 by
doesn't
2.
3 by 2, an
Yeah.
apartment block. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the buyer that bought that lives in the suburb.
Right.
So,
So
yeah.
they're downsizing.
They're downsizing from the big 5 by 3 into something like that.
Yeah. And probably made enough money off that 5 by 3 to
Absolutely.
buy that cash.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Perfect. It's interesting how the market's moving, isn't it?
It is. It's a very interesting market.
Because I got into real estate around the same time as you, 2014.
Right, yeah.
Started doing renovation flips,
Yeah.
and just kind of, I think I finished one right at the peak of that market, and it just tanked straight after that. So, I built my business, and I think you built your brand by the sounds of things in that slow downturn.
I started in a very tough market.
Yeah. You did well for getting through it.
I
mate. think we all did.
know. This last couple of years has almost been like, is it actually happening? Like
It's crazy, isn't it? To
It's
see.
weird.
It's a really interesting market. But then the East Coast investors, it's been their normal market for the
Correct.
last 7-8 years,
Yeah.
maybe. And then they're buying houses in Iluka to move into in 4 years' time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we know if they're ready to retire when they move over here, or are they?
A lot of people are. I'm getting a lot of people looking to buy their retirement home, and it's funny because a lot of these buyers that are coming from, especially Sydney, their downsize is not what my generally WA buyers are downsizing into. Like I've just sold one to a downsizer from Sydney, and they've still bought a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom plus study double story with a pool in Iluka. And then finding out where they were living before, and they've just sold something for $6 million over east, and they've just put $2 million into a house here.
Yeah.
So for them, that's a downsize. They still want that space, but they just don't want yet.
What
So
would-
it's a very interesting sort of downsize.
Be interesting to see what they downsize from, because 6 mil sounds big in
Yeah.
terms of price bracket, but if you put that Iluka property back over there, would that sell for 6 mil? Are they?
Yeah.
Are they just transacted from a very similar size property?
A lot of them say
Yeah.
the same thing. They go, back home, this would be worth so much more.
Yeah.
And they can't, They've fallen off a little bit, the over east investors. They're still there, but not as much as they were before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So primarily we're seeing homeowners.
Owner occupiers, and that's what we're seeing really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any first home buyers in this sort of price brackets?
There are a few that are getting to Iluka, generally professionals that are looking to get into Iluka, and these generally start at that lower end, that 1-2 sort of mark, and they understand just to get into the market, and they go, we'll do it up over time.
Yeah.
That's your very niche sort of first homeowner market. But at the moment, if I look at my first, I do deal with a fair few first homeowners, and they're spending up to $1 million, which I go, that's crazy to try and get into your first home, and it's $1 million.
They've got big deposits, or the
Some of them are borrowing 90%, 85%. I think my first home was $330,000. Do you know?
Mine was 5 something. Yeah, it's a big jump up, right? But again, if the professionals are probably earning good money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In terms of demographic, what are we seeing there? We're seeing business owners, professionals, tradies.
So a lot, combination. So Iluka's got a lot of combinations of white collar workers, but also a lot of tradies that own their own business. And because it is generally a conversation I have with them, can I park my work truck outside and with the covenants? And I'm like, yeah, you can, but it's just an unspoken rule. Yeah. So get a lot of tradies, business owners. That's the sort of people that we get. We are also getting a lot of people that are moving from down south, that have sold their farms and all of that are up north, that are moving to Iluka. They're swapping. It's like a tree change to a sea change sort of thing. Happens all the time. With Currumbine, probably a lot of tradies that are moving in there.
Yep.
And then you've also got a lot of office workers, engineers, those sort of things that are buying that top end sort of property. Yeah.
Any property flippers in there buying low and trying to sell high?
Currumbine, yes. Iluka, very rare, because a lot of property flippers generally have that budget, and Iluka seems to go over that budget. But Currumbine, definitely. There are a lot of people that are going, look, we're happy to buy a project that needs work.
Yeah, okay. And what are we seeing in terms of stock levels on the market right now in terms of Iluka and Currumbine separately?
Sure. So Currumbine's had a run where they have had a fair few sales in the last few weeks, and a lot of those properties have been people that have bought in the last few years and now capitalising on the growth and looking at upgrading.
Where did they upgrade from?
So generally Iluka or in the same suburb.
Right.
Yeah,
so
they go to the golf course section of Currumbine, or they go across the road, Iluka, Ocean Reef, or into Burns Beach.
Right.
So it's like a triangle. Literally, that is a triangle. That's where people move from. In Iluka, most of them generally upsize or downsize into the same suburb if they can help it, depending on what it is, or they go to the next suburb across, which is Burns, or they might look into Connolly as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's literally, they all stay around the same area.
And what do you see kind of happening over the next 12, 24, 36 months? If we can get our crystal ball out, with the interest you're seeing in the suburb right now, with the prices going the way they are, can it continue?
I think the prices will probably stay where they are, and I think there will be continued interest in all the properties. Is it going to have the same sort of growth? I'm not sure, because we have had a massive jump. I'm not sure if it's going to sustain to that sort of level, but I definitely think prices will stay where they are, because I think with the product quality that they're getting in Iluka and also in Currumbine, in honesty, I think the last few years it was very undervalued. I think now it's starting to find its true value.
Sounds like it.
As to where it is.
When we compare it to Sydney, and we've got these people selling their homes for 6 mil, moving over for 2, it always makes me wonder, can Perth keep going? Because we've got the highest wages in the country, and when you compare apples with apples, cheapest real estate, apart from, I think we've took over Melbourne now, so maybe Melbourne's a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
But that could change, who knows? But can it continue with the fact that we are technically going into uncharted territory in terms of price points? Sydney's gone through this and it just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. We've still got an undersupply of property in the market. We've still got a lot of demand, a lot of hunger. We spoke about this off air, didn't we? And the back end of 2024, we've seen kind of buyers drop off a little bit. I think everyone was getting a bit bored of getting outpriced and everything. Are we seeing that pick back up again? And can we see that continue?
Definitely. Inquiry levels have started picking back up again. We did have a little bit of a lull period at the start, but now it's started picking back up again. Yep, and definitely I think home open numbers are still very good. One of my colleagues, Karen, on the weekend, she'd opened something up in Corrine and she saw 90 groups through. That's not 90 people, 90 groups through her home. And it was a long weekend.
What was the price point on that?
I think she was saying it's in the high ones, early twos.
Wow.
Yeah, and 90 groups through. And another one, she had 74.
Wow.
Yeah, that is big numbers.
Yeah.
That is big numbers.
Big numbers for a market that's apparently flat.
And it was a long weekend.
Interesting.
It was a long weekend. So I can't see things going down in all honesty. I think things might just take a little bit longer to transact, and that's what I'm starting to say to sellers. Don't stress if your house is in the market for the second home open. We'll still get the price. We just need to be patient, because I think what's happening in that first week is we're getting those massive numbers through, and buyers are looking at all this competition and going, I'm not going to stand a chance, so then they sit back before they do it. And then they see it open another week and going, maybe we do have a chance. And then they start putting in their offers, and then that's when it starts finding its price. Because it works both ways. It's great to have those big numbers, but sometimes it actually can be a little bit detrimental, because there's that some buyers go, it's not the fear of loss, it's actually, I'm not even going to try. I'm not even going to try.
Just the waste of time.
Yeah.
Do we think the elections and the interest rate drops, do you think that's kind of stimulated that as well?
I think it definitely has. So after the election, things always generally, there's a little bit of unnerviness in the market and sentiment. Buyers not sure what's happening. Always happens a week before an election as well. And then people just go, well, this is a new norm. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we said the median house price in Iluka was 1.47.
1427 or 147?
1427.
Yeah.
Closer. Let's say 1.4.
Yeah, 1.4.
If we had $1.4 million now to buy in Iluka, what would we buy and why?
I would buy something that needs a fair bit of work. That I would buy something obviously closer to the ocean, as close as I can get. Whether it's single story or double story, it's irrelevant. But I would buy something with a very good floor plan that needs work, and I would then look at doing it up. Look at doing it up and then potentially selling it in a few years, because I think there's a lot more growth in that rather than buying something that's already finished. Where the thing with at the moment we've also noticed is the demand for single story homes have outweighed the ones before where double story, where there was always a difference where people thought double story homes were always going to achieve a much higher price. Yes, they are, but single story homes are slowly starting to creep up because the bigger ones, people are going, we've still got the space. We don't need to have 2 levels. Yeah. So that's what I would buy. I'd probably buy a single story home, potentially a double, doesn't matter, but something that needs a facelift.
Yeah. So let's put a price on that facelift with new kitchen, bathroom, carpets, paint throughout. Let's say 125 grandish, roughly. What would that then?
High ones, potentially. High ones if you're really lucky, then you might get a 2, but I would probably say very high ones.
So there's money in there for a flipper as well,
Absolutely.
isn't there? Pick it up for 1.4, stamp duty, and that's probably about 55, 60 grand.
60 grand,
150. So let's say 200 all in with your stamp duty and your conversion, so you're in for 1.6, 7. Yeah, so you could make 300-400 grand on it.
You could because so there was 2 properties recently. So I sold the one on the left for 5, and that was just beautiful. It wasn't a 350 square meter block, so quite a small block, but a really nice 4x3 with a plunge pool out the back. It was finished beautifully. It set a record for that sort of price point. I've just sold the one next door, not finished to the same level. This is probably ready for a facelift. I'd say to get it, it probably would take about 100 grand. That has just transacted for just under 1.5. So I think there's money in that, because I believe if next door went on the market now, it'll probably get a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because the market's obviously shifted again. And I think this one's got money to be made into it. And something like that, for me, I think there's a great investment potential.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Currambine.
Yes.
Median house price, 925,000 currently. What we buying there at the median house
925, you're probably getting either not a massive 4x2, but it'll be on a 600 square meter block. It wouldn't be renovated, but it'd be live-in ready. So it'd be live-in ready. I think if that was renovated, you could easily get well and truly into the mills. You could probably get into that 1-2 sort of mark for what it is. Yeah.
Probably not as much uplift in it then as the Iluka.
Correct.
Yeah.
Not as much.
Interesting.
Not as much.
We touched on development opportunities. There's not much there really, is there?
Not in Iluka. In Currambine, there's a couple of developments. There's obviously those apartment buildings that have been there for years.
Yeah.
Then there's 2 shopping centres. There's obviously one there and there's one on Marmion, and there's another one on Burns Beach Road, which is fairly new. There's also new developments that's happening there. So Currambine has a few subdivisions that is around there. Not a lot, but there are a few. I'm not sure if there is going to be any more after that sort of development.
And lastly, Jay, before I let you go,
That's right.
if we could bring you the perfect house to sell in Iluka, what would it be and what would it sell for?
Perfect house in Iluka, what buyers are looking for would be a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom plus a separate study, theatre, massive open plan living, dining, kitchen, scullery. Upstairs would have another living area, ocean views with a balcony, pool and lawn space for the kids. And that would probably transact around, I'd say, into the early 2s.
Like the perfect house for me and my wife, actually, and the kids, as you explained that. I'm like, oh yeah, that would actually work really well. 3-car garage as well.
3-car garage, that seems to be the one that everyone's looking for at the moment.
Everyone with the toys lately.
Correct.
Yeah, excellent. Hey, Das, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you.
Welcome to the HMO Property Show. By investors, for investors. Catch us weekly as we discuss all things cash flow positive property investing.